Hello and welcome back to another episode of Living Well with Dr. Thanuki. Today the topic of discussion would be hypertension or high blood pressure. Approximately 1 billion individuals worldwide have hypertension, and there are many undiagnosed cases as well. Hypertension or high blood pressure is an independent risk factor for the development of heart attack, stroke and renal failure. What is hypertension? Hypertension is classified as having systolic blood pressure level of more than 140, a diastolic blood pressure level of more than 90. And the lifetime risk of developing hypertension is about 90%. The risk increases with age. Pre-hypertension is classified as having systolic blood pressure level of 120 to 139, diastolic blood pressure level of 80 to 89, and each 20 unit rise in systolic blood pressure and 10 unit rise in diastolic blood pressure corresponds to doubling the risk of developing heart disease. And decreasing the blood pressure can decrease the cardiovascular disease development risk by up to 50%. The short-term reflex control of blood pressure is carried out by neural, hormonal, cardiovascular and renal networks, and this is through a negative feedback system using sensors, and these sensors are called baroreceptors and are located on the aortic arch and also on the walls of the carotid artery. These baroreceptors send signals to the brain in response to the blood pressure, and any changes would result in the brain sending signals to the heart, blood vessels and the kidney through the autonomic nervous system to try to bring the blood pressure close to the set point. For example, when there is an increase in blood pressure, there would be an afferent signal that is sent from the baroreceptors to the cardiocenters in the brain, which in turn would elicit an efferent response that decreases the heart rate by increasing parasympathetic activity and inhibiting sympathetic activity. So this results in vasodilation, passive vasodilation of blood vessels in the peripheral system. Decreased blood pressure or hypertension causes a decreased stretch on the baroreceptors. This in turn activates ADH or vasopressin or what we call antidiuretic hormone to absorb more water in the kidneys. So also this low blood pressure state not only works by activating vasopressin, it also works by activating the beta cells in the kidney by causing it to release renin. This renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system leads to a cascade of effects, including vasoconstriction in blood vessels and salt and water reabsorption in kidneys and increasing blood volume and blood pressure. There is what we call a secondary hypertension or due to a disease stage, but where we can identify the cause of hypertension, but in majority of cases up to 90% it's primary or essential hypertension where we cannot identify a cause for the hypertension. In people with hypertension, the set point for blood pressure is elevated and large changes in blood pressure may occur, but the baroreceptors are no longer sensitive for these changes in order to correct them and bring it back to the normal range. Hypertension is associated with vasoconstriction, which leads to increased stress on the blood vessels through increased free radical oxidation, and this also causes blood vessels walls to thicken and become stiff. Long-standing hypertension causes the heart muscles to hypertrophy. This leads to what is called LVH, or left ventricular hypertrophy, and you can see it on ECG changes as well. And the heart is less effective as a pump in this condition. Prolonged uncontrolled hypertension has a deleterious effect on the heart. This remodeled myocardium and vascular smooth muscle cells have an effect of causing end organ damage. End organ damage particularly to the heart, brain, kidney and peripheral blood vessels. Hypertension can cause target end organ damage. In the case of the heart, this can be seen as left ventricular hypertrophy, MI as in myocardial infarction or heart attack, angina, or even heart failure. In the kidney, this can be seen as chronic kidney disease or renal failure. In the brain, stroke or TIA or transient ischemic attack, peripheral artery disease, and also retinopathy. In young hypertension patient, the case is because of increased salt and water retention, leading to increased cardiac output. In older ones, this is because of increased peripheral vascular resistance. Identifiable causes of hypertension include sleep apnea, chronic kidney disease, primary hyperaldosteronism, using steroids or having Cushing's disease, pheochromocytoma, and thyroid and parathyroid diseases. Also renovascular diseases. Drug-induced causes of hypertension include inadequate doses of the drug, inappropriate combination of the drug, and non-adherence to the drug. Also, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, immunosuppressant drugs, and oral contraceptive pills, steroid use, cocaine, amphetamines, other over-the-counter drugs like ephedra have also been found to have an effect on having high blood pressure. Alcohol and obesity are also associated with having hypertension. How do you diagnose hypertension? Blood pressure has to be taken on 2 occasions, 2 readings. So a normal level is considered less than 120 for systolic, less than 80 for diastolic, and pre-hypertension again is considered as having a blood pressure level of 120 to 139 for systolic and diastolic 80 to 89. Stage 1 hypertension is 140 to 159 systolic and diastolic of 90 to 99, and stage 2 hypertension is having a systolic blood pressure of more than 160 and a diastolic blood pressure of more than 100. When the systolic and diastolic fall into 2 different levels, we take the higher category when assessing the blood pressure. A difference of 10 units or more between the 2 arms when you take a blood pressure measurement would indicate that there is a circulatory problem, and the patient may need to be referred to a physician. A difference of more than 15 units would indicate the risk of developing peripheral vascular disease or cerebrovascular disease, and a risk as high as 70% or more of dying or mortality because of heart disease. For those who have prehypertension, it is recommended to begin with lifestyle intervention, and the goal is to always keep the blood pressure less than 140/90. But in the case of diabetic patients or those who have chronic kidney disease, it is recommended to keep the blood pressure less than 130/80. The algorithm of hypertension management usually begins with lifestyle modifications, and if the blood pressure is not maintained at the goal level, then medications are added. There are various classes of drugs, and depending on the blood pressure level, the dose can be increased and extra drugs may be added, but usually most patients will need about 2 drugs. The lifestyle interventions that you can undertake in the management of hypertension include losing weight. Maintaining a healthy BMI in the range of 18.5 to 24.9 would help you reduce the blood pressure from anywhere between 5 units to 20 units for every 10 kilogram weight loss that you encounter. And in the case of sodium reduction in your diet, so if you control your sodium to less than 2.4 grams per day, that also helps in reducing blood pressure. Adopting the DASH pattern or the dietary approaches to stop hypertension diet, which is rich in fruits and vegetables and low in fat, also helps to decrease hypertension. And also engaging in physical activity in 30-minute durations on most days of the week also helps in decreasing high blood pressure. Avoiding alcohol consumption and reducing the limit of alcohol to 1 to 2 drinks per day for men and 1 drink a day for women, and avoiding and stopping smoking would also help to decrease hypertension. Therefore, I would like to remind everyone that weight loss does have a significant effect on controlling hypertension. For every 5% of your body weight that you lose, there could be approximately 3-unit decrease in the systolic blood pressure and a 2-unit decrease in the diastolic blood pressure respectively. When it comes to pharmacological treatment, there are several options available. There are diuretics, there are beta blockers, there are angiotensin receptor blockers and angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, and vasodilators, aldosterone receptor antagonists, calcium channel blockers, and many more, and most of these carry different side effects. Since we are using exercise as a major treatment modality for hypertension, we must also understand the effect that certain antihypertensive drugs or blood pressure medications may have on the individual, because this may be problematic during an exercise program. For example, if you are on diuretics, this might lead to dehydration. So we ask these clients to adequately hydrate themselves throughout an exercise program to avoid dehydration. And it is important to in certain clients to measure pre and post exercise body weight to understand the amount of fluid that you may have lost as sweat. And timing of exercise may be crucial for certain patients because of diuretics and the need to use the restroom frequently. It might be not practical to have an efficacious workout program. Beta blockers, for example, metoprolol, atenolol, labetalol, they work by decreasing the heart rate, by decreasing heart's contractility and the cardiac output. This can cause a blunt in the normal increase in the heart rate that you would see in response to exercise. And in clients who are taking beta blockers, we recommend fitness professionals to use ratings per exertion on a scale of 6 to 20 rather than monitoring the heart rate response because it's inaccurate. Beta blockers can also mask symptoms of low blood sugar or hypoglycemia, and you can refer to these signs that I discussed in the episode of diabetes in my previous series. Please refer to that and understand how to identify when an individual has hypoglycemia. Individuals may also experience exercise intolerance because of the blunted heart rate response to exercise. So these individuals may need to see their doctor to adjust the dosage of the medication. We ask individuals not to stop taking beta blockers abruptly because this might lead to rebound hypertension. The usual side effects of beta blockers are fatigue, depression, sexual dysfunction, and you may need to see your doctor regarding this. Alpha blockers like processin is known to have orthostatic hypotension as a side effect. So these individuals on alpha blockers are recommended to avoid any sudden changes in body position because this can be detrimental. And it's also recommended for these individuals to have an adequate cool down when you are stopping exercise. Calcium channel blockers like nifedipine, nicardia, amlodipine, they can all cause bradycardia, and the normal increase in heart rate that you would see in response to exercise might not be seen. So these individuals are also recommended to use the ratings for exertion on a scale of 6 to 20 rather than monitoring for the heart rate response when deciding on exercise intensity. Also, it is recommended for these individuals to avoid sudden body position changes and to have adequate cool down. These are the common side effects of antihypertensive medications for your referral. Surgery is not indicated for primary or essential hypertension, but in the case of pheochromocytoma or renal artery stenosis, surgery is effective. When choosing exercise as a treatment modality, it is important that you go through medical clearance first before beginning an exercise program. This is first to identify if you have any target end organ damage, and also to know if exercise is appropriate and to avoid any potential cardiovascular accidents like heart attacks because of exercise. And you may need a physical exam, an ECG, a fasting blood sugar, lipid profile, potassium levels, creatinine, GFR. These will all help us in devising a suitable exercise program and if it's appropriate for you. For prehypertension, aerobic exercise or cardiovascular exercise or cardio is the cornerstone of treatment. And for individuals who have uncontrolled hypertension or complicated hypertension, exercise plus medications would help. Aerobic exercise is a cornerstone of prehypertension treatment through lifestyle intervention. And for uncontrolled hypertension, it is recommended to use medication and exercise both. It is important to identify any cardiovascular risk factors so we avoid any unwanted complications. Hypertension is one, obesity, having a BMI of more than 30, physical inactivity, age, women who are more than 65, men who are more than 55, family history of premature heart disease, diabetes, and dyslipidemia are some of the risk factors. Acute side effects of exercise include post-exercise hypotension or PEH, and this could last up to about 22 hours after an exercise session, and this is because of the decrease in peripheral vascular resistance without an increasing in cardiac output. And the blood pressure can drop up to about 15 units in the systolic part, and in the diastolic up to about 4. If you are hypertensive, you can experience greater drops in blood pressure. And if the duration or the intensity of exercise is longer, you can experience better drops in blood pressure. And exercising as little as 3 minutes, and as at low intensities, even at as low as 40% VO2 max, can have a good effect on lowering your blood pressure. When it comes to understanding the chronic effects of exercise, it has been found that there is an inverse relationship between physical activity and blood pressure. That if you engage in at least 150 minutes of aerobic exercise per week, systolic blood pressure would drop by about 2 to 6 units. And therefore we recommend individuals to engage in 30 minutes of minimum of 30 minutes of exercise on most days. Therefore it is strictly advisable to avoid any sudden body positions and to have adequate cool down because of this post-exercise hypotension, and also because of certain drugs causing orthostatic hypotension. When talking about nutrition, dietary approaches to stop hypertension diet that we mentioned a little while ago, or the DASH diet, has been found effective, and it is also recommended to consume less salt, so sodium of less than 2300 milligrams per day, and in some individuals it's recommended to cut it as low as 1600 milligrams a day, and to consume a lot of fruits and vegetables that can help control blood pressure because of the antioxidant properties, and to decrease alcohol consumption, decrease caffeine, because all of these lead to increasing in both of these lead to increasing in blood pressure, and to decrease body weight, because every 10 kilo that you lose, there is a 5 to 20 unit drop in the systolic blood pressure of individuals. Cardiovascular exercise has a beneficial effect of decreasing blood pressure by decreasing vasoconstriction, and this promotes vasodilation and increases the elasticity of blood vessels, and this in turn leads to decreased peripheral vascular resistance and promotes lowering the blood pressure. It is important to understand what hypertensive thermoregulation is, because these individuals have decreased ability to dissipate heat during exercise or heat stress. So during heat stress what usually happens is the heart rate is increased, and there is vasoconstriction and blood is redistributed to the skin. In hypertensive individuals, blood distribution to the skin is decreased, and this leads to increasing in the core body temperature because of the inability to dissipate this heat. This can be detrimental in individuals who have left ventricular hypertrophy or coronary artery disease. And also those who are on diuretics, beta blockers or vasodilators, when exercising in warm ambient conditions are predisposed to dehydrations, because these individuals have a decreased tolerance of heat. Exercise has a beneficial effect on thermoregulation of hypertensive individuals because exercise strengthens the cardiovascular system, and this helps vasodilation and sweating, and this leads to lowering of the core body temperature. Exercise tolerance tests may be needed for certain individuals to monitor the increase in systolic blood pressure in response to exercise, and this may be done in a supervised cardiac rehab setting. But absolute contraindications for exercise is having a blood pressure level of 200 over 110. Clinical exercise testing is usually recommended if there is target end organ damage or already the patient is having cardiovascular disease, and these are the criteria for it. Indications to stop exercise include angina-like symptoms or having chest pain, and having a drop of 10 units or more in systolic blood pressure despite increasing in working intensity, and also poor perfusion signs if the patient asked to stop, and having clear signs of fatigue, and the heart rate not increasing with increasing in intensity are all signs that you must discontinue the exercise. Indications to stop exercise include angina, having chest pain, and having a drop in more than 10 units in the systolic blood pressure despite increasing in working intensity. Blood pressure of more than 225 or 115, it's a contraindication for exercise and must be discontinued. Other indications to stop include shortness of breath, wheezing, claudication, leg cramping, poor signs of perfusion if the patient requires to stop, and also a failure of the heart rate to increase despite increasing in the intensity of the exercise, and clear signs of fatigue. Also, any noticeable changes in the heart rate or the rhythm is an indication to stop. When it comes to cardiovascular training, we ask individuals to engage in physical activity for about 30 minutes a day. So it can be cycling, swimming, running or walking, and the intensity can be as low as 40 to 60%, or using 40 to 60% VO2 max, or using RPE scale of 60-20, it can be 11 to 13 range. When it comes to resistance training, it is important to understand that you must avoid heavy resistance training because it can increase both the systolic and diastolic pressure, and it can be detrimental. It is okay to engage in moderate resistance work. Absolute contraindications for resistance training include uncontrolled hypertension 160/100, unstable angina, congestive heart failure, valvular disease, and uncontrolled arrhythmias, and hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Resistance training improves your basal metabolic rate and helps you stay leaner, and improves your insulin sensitivity. And you can work out 2 to 3 times a week, 8 to 12 reps of 1 to 3 sets, targeting the major muscle groups of the body. And it's important to avoid the Valsalva maneuver or straining, and to avoid any isometric contractions of muscles. It's also been found that Hatha Yoga has a beneficial effect on blood pressure. So that was hypertension or high blood pressure management in a nutshell. I hope you found it useful. If you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to contact us. And if you haven't done so already, please like and share our pages of social media. And please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channels, and click on the bell icon for any notifications. And I hope to be back next week with another topic. Thank you so much.